Hi, it's Lou Withers. I'm going to be using some Studio Light products today, just to show you a real simple technique, a watercolour technique that can be really simple as it is left, or you can sort of grunge it up, make it classy. It all depends, but it's a nice technique, and it's really good for everybody. So it's not just for beginners or anything. Anybody at any level can do it. So all I'm going to need is a basic kit of some card that you're going to stamp on. I've got my stamp here, some card that I'm going to stamp on. I've got my stamp, and then I'm using some distress inks, and I've got a paintbrush and some water, and that is all I'm going to need. Now I'm going to take it a little bit further at the end, and I will add a colour, but you don't have to if you don't want to. So yeah, I'm just showing you the basis. So what I'm going to do is I've set my card up on here, and this is a pearl card by Pink Frog. It's a beautiful, it's got a pearly, but it's not too sort of over the top. It's got a beautiful sheen on it. And I found it's not meant to be watercolour card, but the way I've used it, it really works. So what I'm going to do is I've got the Lily stamp from the last range, the Mindful Giannini collection. It's a lovely lily, and I'm just seeing, am I happy with that? And there are techniques where you can actually make different apertures for this. And if I get time, I'll hopefully be able to show you some of them. And it just involves picking a block and pressing it into the card. But we'll go into that another time. So I've chosen where I want it. I've put my card there. Now I'm going to use one of the darkest ones. Not black, but I've got Distress in Walnut. And I think I quite like walnut, although I might use a little bit of black later. I prefer to go light and then go darker. You see, Vintage Photo is nice as well, but the Antique Linen is great, but it's a little bit too light for what I want. So I'm going to go with the mid one, which is the walnut stain. And all I'm going to do is ink up my stamp. Now, if I'm inking it up on my block, I'm not too worried, because I can always reintroduce the stamp and double stamp. Whereas if I'm stamping off a platform and it goes wrong, it's really hard to line up no matter how good the stamp is. So just light, gentle taps and cover it all. But like I say, it doesn't really matter if you miss parts. I always normally stand at home to do this, but because I've got my platform, it doesn't really matter. And press. Now, I see people and they whip this back up, or they take the stamp off. Don't do that, because it's like anything. You need the ink to absorb into the surface of the card. So just give it a minute to do that. Not all cards are really thirsty. You have to sort of make it think it needs it. So just press it lightly if you're happy with that. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Really nice, simple stamp. It can be left like that if if you wanted to. I've got a lovely second stamp, so while that's on there, you can see me. that's so a registration mark, so I knew what I was doing. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do partial stamp. So I'm just going to bring it so I've got elements on and off, and this is quite a nice little technique for a future use. And the only reason I'm doing that is because I've got ink on the stamp, it's ready, and I've got that wonderful technique there, which is, it looks so different on the basis of the card, doesn't it? So this is a pearl white colour, this is a cream. Look at the difference, same colour stamp, ink unit, Right, what I've found it really easy is when you stamp on the back of your platform, it's great as a registration plate for the rest of your work. So it all depends on what you're using. So it's really easy to clean now, I have found that. So I'm just going to move that out of the way now, and I'm just going to go to this. We've got what we call positive and negative painting. So basically, it's not what it sounds really difficult. It's just basically painting the object or the area that the object's around. So for instance, if I've got an apple, it's either you paint the apple inside it or you paint around the outside of the apple, which is negative painting. So there is that, all different. So I'm going to do some negative painting. So painting the actual object, I tend to call it positive painting, but people don't, but I do. I've got my own rules. So I've got a little tiny bit of water here, not a lot, not a lot. And the first thing I'm going to do is take that off. I know it sounds daft putting it on, taking it off. I don't want too much water. All I'm doing is I'm sort of moist, like I did with the sponge, moistening it so the colour stays at the end. And I'm just going to see, just wipe it. Don't wipe it on your pants. I'm going to see how much this works without any colour. So I'm getting a little bit of travelling, and by that I mean that the colour is coming out a little bit, but it's thirsty card. But there's a reason that I go round first. Oh, I've got plenty there. There's a reason I go first with water, and that's, it might sound, it's almost like you're giving it enough to drink so that when you put the next bit on, it's not as thirsty. So I'm just going round with just a damp paintbrush. Just don't go all the way. Well, you can sort of go halfway. If you're confident, go all the way, but you just need to sort of introduce a little bit of water around it. Only the width of your paintbrush. You don't need to sort of wash all the way out of it. So, and if you remember, it's like painting by numbers when we was kids and we had them magic them magic books. Used to put water on them and all these colours would be. Still love the idea of that now. I still think that's great. I always remember that. That and watching my first embossing work, and I was just mesmerised. So I've gone round that now. As you can see, you start sort of really keen and neat, and then you start, by the end of it, you're not that sort of tidy. But I've laid down what we call a tiny bit of colour. So now all I'm going to do is pick up a tiny bit of this. Now you don't need a lot, and I'm just going to drop that in, just very lightly near the edge. And like I say, because I've already got some water down there, that is easy for me to just introduce a little bit more water. Wiggle your brush. And by wiggle, I mean wiggle your brush like that. And there is that, because you're scrubbing, but not scrubbing away the edge, but you're scrubbing water into the edge so it'll soften it. Just probably hear that. And again, it doesn't take long. It really doesn't. And it'll probably go wrong once or twice, but it'll be good for me to show you how it goes wrong and what you can do. So I'm just going to do, it's very meditative, this. It's very nice to watch. What you can do is just bring that out even more. If you've got a line and it's too thick, bring it out. But I find, this sounds really strange, but I can sit and watch people doing this for hours. And I'm a big lover of going onto YouTube or any of the other platforms, and I go on, I watch Hochanda all day and see how people do techniques, and I just get mesmerised by it, because I just think they're just simple techniques, but they're so powerful. And try not to get everything dirty like me. I'm trying to be clean by wearing gloves today. It's not working. So I'm just by the stem. You'll have noticed that I've gone back in quite a lot, and the reason is I wanted to introduce a tiny bit more depth. So I'm nearly done. It doesn't take long. And then if you want more shade and less depth, then you can just apply more of a wash. So a thicker line like that. I'm trying to show you all the things you can do, so that if you think, oh, I've gone wrong, that was too thick, it isn't, because that, you just take the moisture off your brush, give it a wash in the water there, and then blend it out using that wiggle. And if you haven't done it there's a certain amount of time that you've got, and if you can work within that time, then you're not going to have any lines or anything that's going to stand out too much. If it does, just go back in with a tiny bit more colour, and then what we call scrub it out, and that means just push it out. So it won't take me long to do the rest. But you can see it's quite a mesmerising. I tend to do it a lot faster than I'm actually doing it here, because I like the idea of it being a bit more haphazard. I just think it looks softer. But each to their own. And don't worry about the beveling. The beveling will come out once you've dried both sides and you can tell when card is dry because it's flat on both sides. If it's not dry, you'll get what they call a wet pocket, and that means where it sort of bevels in. And the other trick to finding out whether your paper's dry is if it's cold, it's still wet. So I'm basically done now. I'm just going to put the finishing touches to that, wash it out a little bit more. If you want to introduce areas of depth like I've done here, it would be darker in here naturally anyway. So, and don't forget these, because these dark areas here would really be quite dark, and what that helps you to do is pick out the details of the flower. So just finish this bit, and then I think the finishing touches, which to me you don't have to do, and it might be a bit of a bright colour to do it, but I'll mix it a bit with this, a bit of the pink with a little bit of the vintage, no it's not, it's, what is it, walnut stain, and I'm just going to put tiny bit. So I've put down a pink base, and then I've got this wonderful colour, and it's called, ready, quinacridone nickel azo gold, and it's a golden colour, and it's rust in a bottle. Look at that. And you know that lilies, they have that beautiful colour, but they also have that bright orange stuff that goes everywhere. Well, that. And then I'm just putting that on just to warm them up, and then just, they have sort of very faint lines, lilies, and that's the same colour. I'm just following the lines that are already on it, and let me just wash that. So clean all that up, and if you're sort of thinking, oh look at that, it doesn't look right, don't worry, because what you can do is get a clean brush, this might not be clean, and just scrub it out, and that'll just pop off like that. So you won't see any of that, this is just residue. Okay, so there you go, that's a negative painting. I wish it would stay down. Negative painting, just one stamp and a piece of card. Really, really simple, colouring in. But what, I love that. That's so classy, really classy. I can sit and do that for hours. So make your own colouring books, do your own doodles. This is the starting point and so many ends. So I can't wait to see what you do with this as well.